Hello, my astrology and book lovers. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new. I am Danyell Carmelita, your favorite tarot reader and astrologer. Welcome back to another episode of Zodiac Reads, Books Aligned with the Stars. And welcome to my bedroom. I am in my bedroom because I thought that was so fitting for Pisces. Pisces represents sleep. So she's in her bedroom, in her PJs. I'm not about to go to sleep though. And also too, when you're with books, don't you think cozy, comfort, relaxation? And who doesn't read a great book before they go to bed? So she's in her bed. We're in Pisces season as I am filming this. That doesn't mean that you have to watch this while we're in Pisces season. And Pisces is all about the dreams, visionaries, those who see beyond reality. And we are talking about out of this world realms, poetic storytelling, a very surreal storyline or books that are very dreamlike. It's like you're floating into a dream. Pisces energy is very magical, very mystical, and you're taking this limitless boundary of fantasy and imagination and creativity, and all that is involved in the themes that I have chosen. I did this video last week and we really talked about books that were dealing with escapism, books that were very much about an illusion. You could be reading about one thing and all of a sudden it's really something else, so more of a plot twist kind of book. And books that were dealing with secrets, because Pisces is all about things that are very hidden. And today in this episode we are talking about fantasy. Now, fantasy is very popular on TikTok. I used to have TikTok. It's still on there if you look me up, but I deleted the app on my phone, so I don't have TikTok anymore. But I'm very familiar, the goings-ons of TikTok. And there's a lot of fantasy on there. This week, we're also talking about mythology. So if you're really into mythology-inspired fiction books, this is going to be a great week for you. Also, I got into something I've never, like surrealism. I didn't know what that was until this week, until doing research. So that's also involved in here. And then I randomly put in dreams because we're in our pajamas and we're talking about Pisces. So I had to put that in. So first, let me give you some honorable mentions. And these books, I am going to just bring them up because they're fitting for Pisces, but they don't fall into the category, but you can look them up. Now, I have all my books here. I don't know how these booktubers or big book talkers or Instagram, whoever, you know, how they do this when they're in different settings, because I had to bring these books out from the shelves and place them in the categories and put them. That's work. So first book, this is actually not an honorable mention. I just want you to understand that I'm going to mention this book several times. This book has been mentioned several times in my research of everything Pisces because it's dealing with magic. We're talking about different worlds. And I do think this is a well-written book. I read this years ago and it's still one of the top books. So anyway, when I talk about Night Circus, know that I'm talking about this book. So it's not an honorable mention. It's just letting you know that I'm going to be talking about it a few times. Now, this is an honorable mention. I actually got this from the library. It is S.A. Cosby. I read another book by him. I'll put it up if I can remember. And it's called My Darkest Prayer. I actually don't know what this book is about. I handle the bodies. That's the first sentence of the synopsis. But I do want you to understand that there is a church in this book. You're talking about darkest prayer too. This is very Pisces energy. Pisces represents spirituality, which could also represent religion, and then also secrets. So here we go. It says, I handle the bodies, whether it's working at his cousin's funeral home, endings, death, that is also Pisces, or tossing around the local riffraff at his favorite bar. Nathan Waymaker is a man who knows how to handle the bodies. A former Marine and sheriff's deputy, Nathan has built a reputation in his small southern town as a man who can help when no one else can. So what does he do? When a beloved local minister is found dead, oh my gosh, here we go. This is where it gets good. The local minister is found dead and they ask him to investigate because the main character, Nathan Waymaker, used to be a Marine and a sheriff's deputy. So this is very interesting, and it's he works at his cousin's funeral home. You know what? I might read this. I have a few books. Let me know which ones you think should read. But so far, this is going up there. This might be on my TBR. By the way, because I used to be a booktuber about 11 years ago. Last time Jupiter was in Gemini, we discussed this in the last episode. Anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is that the terms are so new. Did we have TBR? We had TBR, but we didn't have DNF. I had to Google what DNF was because that sounds like down to F, explicit, but it's did not finish. Anyway, back to what I was saying. This may be on my TBR for Pisces season, and it looks like a very short read. It is about 200 and something pages, so that sounds good. Another honorable mention. I don't know which booktuber suggested this as a read, but I got it. This was on my list of wanting to read. I think it's on my Fable. It's not on my Goodreads. I use both, but I'm trying to transfer over to Fable fully. Anyway, but the Book of Form and Emptiness, it's about death. I do know that, about grief. 1 year after the death of his beloved musician father, 13-year-old Benny O begins to hear voices. The voices belong to things in his house. A sneaker, a broken Christmas ornament, a piece of wilted lettuce. Although Benny doesn't understand what these things are saying, he can sense their emotional tone. Some are pleasant, a gentle hum or coo, but others are snide, angry, and full of pain. When his mother, Annabelle, develops a hoarding problem, the voices grow more clamorous. Ooh, very interesting. So he hears voices. And it's also about grief. This is very interesting. I'm not sure if there's a plot twist. I only got one recommendation, and I wish in Fable or Goodreads we can say who we got the recommendation for. This may be a maybe, but this is definitely a Pisces read, and it was recommended, so there is. That's why it made honorable mentions. I do also want to say, no, that's it. I do know that this is really good, though, from what they recommend. Anyway, another honorable mention. Now, this is a DNF. That was my first time using that. I actually bought this when I was actually going to the store. I was going to get Fourth Wing at Barnes & Noble's. I forgot the title of Fourth Wing. I just knew what the cover looked like because I heard so many people talking about it. And so I just randomly went to Barnes & Noble's, and I refused to look up TikTok or pull up anything. And I'm like, I'm looking for a famous book. And I didn't ask anyone. I'm just perusing around the store, and I didn't find it. Anyway, but this book was everywhere. So I was like, maybe this book is popping. So I bought it. This is so fitting for Pisces energy. Why? Because it's talking about 8. Actually, oh my gosh, in this book, the novel is narrated in part by the book itself. Wow, that's really creative. The book itself is narrating the story. That's really creative. Wow. But back to this. This is about 888, and it really ties into numerology, which is also very Pisces. The main character is trying to find love, and he's trying to connect it to numerology. I forgot how, if he was trying to find it and when it was a time or the date, but he always connected something to numerology. I'm actually at page 148, and it ends at 389. So maybe a little bit under, maybe 40% in this book. But I do want to say that it is very well written. It's just that it hops from the past to the present. I think it's the present. Also, then there's a storyline about his uncle, and he has some word of wisdom too. But yes, it's about 888, and it's a historical fiction and psychological fiction. There's a lot of symbols, right? Because we're also talking about numbers and numerology. And 888 is a very powerful number. And in Chinese numerology, 8 is really a very powerful number. And 8 is a pattern he keeps looking for. And it represents positive potential, but sometimes it's weighing, the expectations are too high because he's looking for the ultimate 8-8 lover or something like that. So far when I was reading, he meets someone, I think in college, and it's back in the day. So it's in the 80s, and he works at like a VHS store, and are listening to Walkmans or something like that. It is a good read so far. And I think it's even, he talks about him going to prom. I don't remember, it was a while ago, but the writing is good. It's just that I just lost interest in it because it's just hopping. And I wanted to read Fourth Wing. I do also want to say just a subgenre that is an honorable mention is dark academia fantasy. Dark academia, I find personally, is more Scorpio energy. So I have nothing that's about dark academia, because when you're talking about dark academia, you are talking about, first of all, dark. That could be Pisces, but it's more that gothic energy. I tend to see is more Scorpio. But from what I know, the dark academia is also an obsession of knowledge, and that also is very Scorpio energy. And there's forbidden relationships and hidden agendas. This can very much lean into Pisces energy, but I'm going to put it in Scorpio because it's so dark. But the books, I wonder about the Zodiac Academy, if that's part of this genre. I don't know anything about that, and I think it could be YA. But also too, if we were villains, they say that's in Dark Academy. See, villains, all that just gives me very much whatever. I'm just telling you, I'll put up some of the books that could be dark academia, but we're not talking about that in here. We're going to put that in Scorpio season. So now let's talk about fantasy. I find that I should have saved the best for last because I feel like this is the big one, but we're putting fantasy in here. We're going to start with fantasy. And why is fantasy connected to Pisces? First of all, again, if you're new to astrology, welcome. And Pisces is very mystical. It's very magical. The ruler of Pisces is Neptune and Jupiter. So there's abundance. There's this expansion belief of no limit, right? And creativity and your imagination. Neptune is the ruler of imagination and dreams, and you're dealing with magic and new worlds in magic. So mythical creatures are creatures that you create out of your mind. It's very Neptune energy. Also too, with a lot of these fantasies, there's love, but that's more next week. We're focused on this week. But really like the journey of a magical world with mystical creatures, and sometimes there's this deep emotional undertone under these fantasy books, and a lot of magic, and Pisces is all about the magic. So let's get into some traditional, I would say it's more like traditional classic fantasy. So the number one, I need to straighten up my legs, hold on. I thought the bed would be comfortable, but so the number one top fantasy book, right, I would think, is Lord of the Rings. I've never read this book, but I'm telling you, I think it's one of the top. So there we have that. This is the standard. This is what we're going by. All right. Now, a very big author in this genre is Sarah J. Maas. From looking at TikTok, the books that she writes are all over the place. Everyone's loving these books. I haven't read this book. I purchased this book and I'm going to read it. So this is on my TBR. This is a guaranteed on my TBR. The S.A. Cosby is a maybe TBR, but this is definitely on my TBR. But she is high up there in fantasy. I don't know if you know anything about these books. I don't know anything about this book. When a 19-year-old huntress, Fiery, how do you say her name, kills a wolf in the woods, a terrifying creature arrives to demand retribution, dragged to the treacherous magical land she knows about only from legends. Oh my gosh, this is a portal book. We're talking about portals in this book, and this is a portal book. Anyway, she discovers that her capture is not only a beast, but one of the lethal immortal fairies. Is it fairies? Because it says fairies. Who once ruled the world. At least he's not a beast all the time. Or does she start to fall in love with this mystical creature? Anyway, so I'm thinking it's dealing with a portal, and we're going to discuss portals in fantasy. So put that in your pocket. Next, we have Game of Thrones as a fantasy book. This isn't the first book. I cannot find the first book. The first book that I read in this series is a soft cover, a floppy book, which I love, and it was shorter. I remember, and I loved that book. But I don't think I read this one. I think I just started to watch the movies, and I need to go back and read it. I think I only read 2 of the books, I think, or maybe 1. What book is this? Whatever. This is a top fantasy book. If you haven't read any of Game of Thrones, like Song, Ice, and Fire books, then you're missing out. But we're talking about low magic here. We're talking about more realistic energy. They're not walking around with magical wands or magical. Some people have magic, but not all of them. It's giving low magic. So this is more my speed. Not like this one is too fantasy, but I haven't read it, so we'll see. This one might be more my speed. Anyway, so, well, it is because I read it. I read the first one and it was amazing. So I'll put all the books down here, and you know what? I think we'll go back and revisit that. I did love the Game of Thrones first book so much. Another fantasy series, and this is actually book 2. This isn't book 1, so this annoyed me, is the Crescent series, the Crescent novel series. I don't know what it's about. This is a very viral fantasy book. New York Times bestsellers. Let me see. Get the inside. Hold on. Okay, Quinlan and Hunt Althalar are trying to get back to normal. They may have saved Crescent City, but with so much upheaval in their lives lately, they mostly want a chance to relax, slow down, figure out what the future holds. I guess they're saving the world. Sounds like they're trying to save the world. It's a very popular series. Let me know if you love this series. I'm not sure if I'm going to read this. This is very thick, and this is book 2, so this is definitely a no for me. I got this from the library, but I just wanted to let you know that this is a very big series as far as like fantasy. Okay, here are the big doozies. Okay, read 2 out of these 3 books, and this is Fourth Wing series. What is the series even called? What is it called? Does anyone know what this series is called? I don't see. Okay, just Fly or Die. I don't know what the series is called. Anyway, but yeah, I did a little video on this on my Instagram when I was doing Instagram. Anyway, but yeah, I got this book because everyone on TikTok was talking about it, and I had FOMO. I had to know. And you come from a world where smut wasn't in every book. I come from a world where fantasy books didn't have smut, and now I see why this book is popular. I do not think little kids should be reading this book. If you're a little kid and you're reading this book, you need to tell your mom you're reading this book, and you need to tell her what's in this book, okay? So I also come from a world where I got a Judy Blume book from the library, and I think it was called like something Forever and something like that. And Judy Blume was known for writing little kids books, but then she wrote this book that wasn't a little kid book, and I got it from the library, and I took it to my drama class. And one of my friends, I would never forget, I forgot her name, but I would never forget when she was like, oh, my mom said I'm not allowed to read this book. And I'm like, why? And she said, turn to page 24. Like page it was on. Anyway, to finish the story, there was a smut scene, okay? Also, too, smut, I didn't even know what smut was until, I learned smut when I learned D and F. And now smut is everywhere. And now they're selling merch with smut all over the place. Anyway, my son, who is older, he's a grown-up, okay? He thinks he's a grown-up, but he is. He is 18 or 19. How old? I don't know how. He's older, okay? My son, who is not in high school, he's older than high school. His girlfriend wants to read this book. I think that is the appropriate age to read this book, okay? So I may give her this book. I started to annotate this book because I thought it was going to be like Game of Thrones, but it wasn't. It's very easy read. I do want to say that I do like the plot twist at the end, but we're talking about dragons. We're talking about love story. And magic, a lot of fantasy. I didn't like this book. I did like Fourth Wing better. This is the second book of that. But I do like the plot twist at the end gets me, because then I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to read the next book. I have not read this book yet, so we'll see. And I got it from Target. It's got the sprayed edges, so we'll see how that goes. All that I just mentioned is very high fantasy. You're talking about your magic. You're talking about another world. You're talking about the different plot twists. You're talking about the author has to explain what is going on, because this is not what real life is about, okay? Now we have low fantasy, and low fantasy is like fantasy elements that exist, but it's surrounded by a real world. This is my kind of fantasy. I realize that I like low fantasy. Okay, so one of the examples of this is a book that I mentioned last week. This is not the original cover of the book, but this is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Okay, I found out that this author, because I started to look up other books about this author, she's pretty dark. That's very Pisces, okay? Be aware of the things you read, by the way, okay? I feel like she talks about Satan in this book, so I may not be reading any more of her books. She is a great author. If that stuff doesn't scare you, or you're like, it doesn't bother me, and you like a well-written author, then I would say go ahead and read her books. Now, another low fantasy book is this one. This is The Night House. This is also by her, no? Yes. No. Oh, I thought this was by her. This isn't by her. Oh, I might be reading this one then. Anyway, so yeah, one I thought was written by the same one, but this is the ninth house. This is also, why did I think this was by her? Oh, I think I read another book by this author. I'm going to put it up. I can't think of it. It's like a familiar book, I think. Anyway, that could get kind of dark, but that one's, I feel like, is darker. I feel like she's V.E. Schwab is darker. Anyway, but what I'm trying to tell you, I'm just jumping all over the place, is that this is low fantasy. Low fantasy is more my judge. I'm talking about a more realistic life, and then all of a sudden I do magic. So like, say I'm a YouTuber, and then all of a sudden blink my eye, and then like turns pink. And then I blink my eye, and then everything is, well, you get to judge, like have magical gifts. Okay. It's a real setting. So this one is called the ninth house. This is very Pisces, right? This gets a little maybe dark academia, but because it's in a real setting, we're talking about magic. Also, I think this dealing with occults too. Freshman class, raised in Los Angeles by her hippie mom, Alex dropped out of school early and into a world of shady drug dealer boyfriends and dead-end jobs, and much, much worse. At the age 20, she is the sole survivor of a horrific, unsolved, multiple homicide. Talk about a horrible life. But at the hospital bed, Alex is offered a second chance to attend one of the world's most prestigious universities on a full ride. And what's the catch and why her? It's about dark magic, murder. Had a pretty high score. Big example of low fantasy is Twilight. You know, she was like in the high school with the school, but she was like a vampire. You know, she was a vampire and he's a werewolf, and you know, so a prime one. Another one, this one, because this is like in a world, and then like the circus pops up at night. So that's another one of low fantasy. And then this one here, I think this one's low fantasy. Yes. Now this is a classic book. This is called Perfume, the story of a murderer. Oh my gosh, you guys, Pisces get so dark. It's not that I didn't realize, I just didn't think about it until it's like now I have to do the books. It gets very dark. Okay. This one is, this is a classic. This is why I bought it. I haven't read it. So this will be on my TBR too. So far we got 3 books on the TBR. We got a 1 maybe and definitely a 2. Okay. This is, the novel falls under a historical fantasy and horror fiction. It's set in 18th century France, and it tells the story of a person, a man whose extraordinary sense of smell, and he becomes a serial killer in a quest to create the perfect scent. I know there's magic involved in this, and yes, a Mars and Taurus in a 12th house. That's what this is giving. Okay. Anyway, if you know anything about astrology, of course I have to tie it back to astrology. But this is low magic and low fantasy, but there is magic involved. And that is definitely a book that I'm going to read. I've heard a lot of things about that book and I'm nosy. So I just want to read that just because I'm nosy. Okay. Let's talk about portal fantasy. We're still talking about fantasy. Okay. Portal fantasy is when you are in your world, and all of a sudden you open a closet or you go through a window. Okay, well go through a window and you enter a whole nother world. That is called portal fantasy. Okay, some prime example of portal fantasy: The Lion, the Witch, the Wardrobe. That's like a top one. Alice Adventures in Wonderland. That's another one. The Chronicles of Narnia. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, The Wrinkled in Time, The Never-Ending Story, The Golden Compass. I just want to tell you everything I just named. If you're my age, you remember these shows coming on when you were a kid. This is before cable, okay? Even before remote controls. This is when you have to turn the knob and you watch this show, and it would come on and it would be interrupted by commercials, and it was nothing else to watch. Okay, so I feel a certain way about these books and I don't want to read them. But after seeing Oz, I might want to read The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, because I actually want to read the Oz. Or Wicked, not the Oz, the Wicked. I actually want to read Wicked because, okay, anyway. So there it is. That's that. Harry Potter, considered to be part of this. Where's my Harry Potter book? Oh, Harry Potter. Now, this is not the first one. This is actually, I think, my daughter's. She read a few of these books, my oldest, and she said it was so good. So I might be reading Harry Potter, and we're going to put that in my TBR because I want to read Harry Potter, and we might do that in Audible or definitely on my Kindle, or maybe I'll get the book. Okay, you know what? I'll read the first book. If I really like it, I'm going to buy the whole series and we're going to put it up because those are classics. So I might be doing that. What the heck? So the power went out. I do want to tell you, Quicksilver. That is like a portal book. That is another fantasy book that's very, very popular. I see that book all over the place. I actually have that on my Hoopla, and I keep saying I'm going to listen to it. We'll see. Okay. That is now on my TBR. This is, so far, these are guaranteed on my TBR, and then we're throwing Harry Potter on there. So we may not be doing that. Okay. So I do want you to understand that there are so many books that are dealing with portal fantasy that have doors on them. Okay. So many. You're talking about every heart, a doorway. Lost in a moment and found, there's a door. Where the drowned girls go, there's a door. There's so many doors when it comes to the portal. I hope you can see me. The light is coming through here. Anyway, okay. Other books that are very portal, which I did read, is Outlander. I did like this. See, this is low magic. Not low magic. This is low fantasy, and it's a portal fantasy book. I like this. This one I really like. This is even the book that I read. I actually repurchased this because I realized I liked it so much. And yeah, it's a series. So I might be reading the rest of these books. Okay. This one is amazing. Amazing. Especially if you love like romance books. And it's dealing with a portal and it's fantasy, not as much magic. And also too, she's like a healer. That's very Pisces in here, okay? Yes, and it's like someone who travels back in time through a magical portal, and I think it's definitely in Europe somewhere. Like I don't know. Because they're like Irish, so somewhere over there. And yeah, Scottish and Irish, and it's like historical fiction too, and fantasy and portal. And she's a healer. Very Pisces energy, okay? Now, that is what I have for fantasy. You guys give me any recommendations if you have any regarding fantasy, okay? I think I'm going to move you. Let's move you towards the light. I don't know if this is better, but you've been moved. There's more light. I want to talk about mythology, okay? And mythology is also very Pisces energy. You're talking about symbolism, okay? Now, you think it's more historical, but you're talking about historical magic, like fables kind of energy. So remember, Pisces is about dreams. It's about magic. It's about the subconscious. It's about mysticism. It's about imagination. There's illusions. There's prophecies. There's spirituality. And Pisces is like the oldest zodiac sign. So there's also ancient wisdom. We're also dealing with escapism, things that are very out of this world. I'm pretty sure I said symbolism. Okay, because when you're talking about symbolism, you can also talk about like archetypes, right? Like people or themes are, people who represent a certain kind of psychology of something. And Pisces is the last water sign. So it embodies Cancer and Scorpio energy really strong, right? Because it's the last water sign. So, you know, you think Scorpio more psychology, but since Pisces is the last water sign, we can throw Scorpio energy in there as well. And speaking of water, it's very fluid. And I find that mythology has a lot of sea creatures and it has a lot of water deities in it. Okay, so let's talk about some mythology books that are also very fiction and kind of feels a little fantasy. And a lot of people are very aware of mythology when it comes to Greek mythology, but there are different cultures of mythology. Okay, so let me throw some out here. We have Greek, Roman, Egyptian, Hindu, Chinese, African, Japanese, Celtic, Norse, which is like Odin, Thor. All these have different mythology. Kind of books are just the theories of mythology. So a mythology book that is very popular is called Cirque. If you visit the bookstores, you've seen this book. I'm down to read this book, okay? If this is anything like the book I read already, I'm down to read this book. Before I even go there, okay, I'm definitely going to read, which I talked about last week. It is called Children of the Blood and Bone. I talked about this last week, right? And this is mythology. It's a West African mythology book about Orisha gods, a YA fantasy inspired by Yoruba mythology featuring a young heroine fighting to restore magic and to her people. Now, I told you what it was about last week, so I'm not going to go into that. But I am going to tell you that as I am filming this, we're going to have Venus retrograding in sign Aries. We're going to have Mercury retrograding in the sign Aries. And that doesn't matter if it's not happening with you. I'm just telling you what's currently happening. And that's a lot of fighting. So this might be really good, okay? Aries represents fighting. I might be basking in that energy of reading that. And then also, too, I was even thinking about going back and getting that book because Hunger Games has an additional book. added on. I'll put it here. And Hunger Games with Aries energy, and then it's retrograding. That might be on top of my TBR once Venus retrogrades. Okay, so and then also another mythology book that I read, and this book was so good. Okay, and I'm not even into reading like gay love stories, but after this I'm like, oh, I'm open, I'm down. Okay, talking about gay, if you're a good writer, I'll read it. I'm open now, okay? And this book opened my mind to it, okay? This is a song of acolytes, and it is so well written, and it's about Greek mythology, and you're talking about fighting and war. It gives you all the magic. It gives you all the Pisces energy that you want, okay? Of course, with the war, and also with love, okay? Endless amounts of love, too, because he even starts to, like, a woman even starts to love him, even though he is so gay, okay? Yes, this is a great, great book. Definitely a 5 stars. Definitely a 5-star. Another book that's really popular that is also dealing with mythology is The Poppy War. This one I want to read. I won't be reading this month, but I definitely, next time I go to the store, I'm going to buy it. And it is a Chinese mythology, and it's about military fantasy. So that one, it sounds really good. Also, you have The Skin of the Sea. That is very Pisces theme, right? It's a mythology. It's a West African mythology, and it's about mermaids. Ooh, we love mermaids, right? Also, She Who Became the Sun. It blends Chinese and African mythology. And and it's about historical figures and mythical storytelling. I also have The Star Touched Queen, and it's inspired by Hindu mythology and the legend of Hades and Persephone. I don't want to say the words wrong, but yes, you get the gist. So those are the mythology books. I'm down to read mythology books. Surrealism and Absurdist. Okay, I might be saying this word really wrong. Okay, Pisces naturally exists between two worlds, right? And surrealism and absurdist fiction reflects the subconscious reality. Okay, like one is really out of here, like not like in space beyond, and Pisces sees beyond reality. Surrealism is all about breaking boundaries of logic, and it has no limitation. The goal of surrealism is to break free from logical constraints and dive into the world of dreams, emotions, and hidden truths. There's dreamlike energy. It gets very bizarre. It gets a little Aquarius involved in here. Okay, there's blending realities and fantasies. There's subconscious themes, and there's unexpected images when you have this. Okay, now this is something that I've been wanting to read for a long time. It won't be happening this month, but we'll see. This is on a very, very bottom list of the TBR. But this is 1Q84. I wanted to read this years ago, and I haven't read it. I've checked it out from the library several times and haven't read it. I might have to do an audiobook on it, or I might have to read it when I go on vacation or something. This one is a surrealist book. Okay, another one that's very popular that I've seen all the time is called The Castle. If you're a book reader, you've seen this all over the place, okay? And then now we're talking about Absurdist. Sometimes you cannot put words in to make something be understood. This is Absurdist, and that's very Pisces, because Pisces is very, if you know anyone of Pisces, a Mercury and Pisces, they're really like, the communication is off, but they can draw, they can communicate with feelings. Okay, it focuses on the idea that life is inherently meaningless and existential themes and strange or irrational events. Okay, there's lack or logical structure. Characters are questioning their reality. Very Pisces theme. Oh, a book that I read, and I don't have this, so I must have read this on my Kindle, is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. You guys, I hated this book. Hated this book. Talk about confused. I was so confused. I felt like I was drunk while reading this book. Okay, that's what I felt like. I think there was even a movie on this book, but it's just so weird. But it might be your thing. It is a very popular book, but there's dark humor. It's really weird. Not my judge. Maybe your thing. And another one that's very popular. I have this book. I think my son read this book. I bought this because it's a classic, and it's called Catch-22. After reading 1984, you guys, I bought so many classics because I was like, oh, no, you will not be burning my books. Okay. So this is one of the classics that I bought, and I think my son read it, and I had no idea it was absurd. This one is definitely a book I want to read. So lastly, I want to talk about books that are more like a dream, okay, because dream is also dealing with Pisces. This is the last section, okay? Pisces, again, I'm in my pajamas, I'm in my bedroom, the power went out. Has nothing to do with Pisces. time and reality, life being blurred, you being confused, is this real or not real? That is very dreamlike energy, and those are the type of books we're talking about when we're talking about this section, okay? Dreamlike writing that feels like you're in a Neptune-induced trance. This book I do want to read, and this is called A Starless Sea. Okay, so this is on my TBR, not my TBR for now, TBR for later. Okay, it's definitely give us water vibes, so that's filling in that Pisces energy. But every book that I look up about dreams, they always talk about this book, so that is something I want to read. It says lyrical dreamlike fantasy, a secret world hidden within books. Oh my gosh, now I want to read it now. Talk about this book again and again and again and again and again and again. It's popping up every week. So there's that. Oh my gosh, 100 Years Solitude. Where is that book? I mean, written as if you're in a dream. I don't know. This also, to me, I consider a classic. Look, it was Oprah's one of her favorite books. But you're talking about 100 Years Solitude. This is a very Pisces thing. Being alone is a very Pisces thing. Let me see what else we have. Magical realism, multi-generational story of a family in a mythical town, blending fantasy and reality. Okay. There's mystical symbolism in it. It's like it's like a never-ending dream. That's what it says. I do know there's incest in this book, so that's not my judge, but you know, I'm nosy, so there's that. Okay, this is the backup TBR. Oh, and the last one. This one actually seems really good. Oh, this is called Hamnet. Hamnet is about grief and loss and a mystical connection between life and death. They said it's very poetic too. England, 1580, the Black Death creeps across the land, an ever-present threat infecting the healthy, the sick, the old, and young alike. The end of days is near, but life always goes on. A young Latin tutor, penniless and bullied by his violent father, falls in love with an extraordinary, eccentric young woman. Agnes is a wild creature who walks her family's land with a falcon on her glove and is known throughout the countryside for her unusual gifts as a healer. Oh my gosh, this is so Pisces energy. It gets me excited because then it makes me want to read the book. Understanding plants and potions better than she does people. You guys, that is the book that I'm currently reading now. She's a healer, and then she went to go visit another doctor who is like, she's a black lady who's like a stronger and better healer than her. Oh my gosh, you guys, I love stuff like that, okay? And that is The Frozen Winter. That is what I'm currently reading. I'm at 50%, so I'm almost finished, and that's why I have to pick another book. When his beloved son succumbs to sudden fever. Oh, is someone gonna die? Is a kid gonna die? Oh, I think their kid dies. National bestseller. We love to hear that, okay? Not New York Times bestseller, national bestseller. And you know what even I love better? An international bestseller. Might be on the TBR. Yeah, so that is what we have for this week of all the books that's representing Pisces. We talked about fantasy, high, low, a little bit of academia. We also talked about surrealism, absorbis. I can't say that word, whatever. Found out why the power's out. It's because they're working on solar panels here. Anyway, I am an astrologer at the end of the day. So if you're into astrology at all, go ahead. I have some free stuff, okay, down below. I have an ebook that you can purchase if you want to read your own chart. Go ahead and do that. You can join my community. I break down celebrities and their natal charts. I also give you what's the vibe in the sky. You can join my newsletter. That's completely free, and it gives you the weekly astrological transits. Other than that, please just subscribe, okay? Join the club, because I'm doing more of these books and I'm tying it into astrology. So if you love books and you love astrology, welcome home. All right, I will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye bye.